Everybody smile.
We're gonna keep from making weird faces.
Yeah. Did
Yeah,
you start?
yeah. All right. So here we are again. Um, the third conversation,
Good to be back.
huh?
Good to be back.
Yeah,
Good to
man.
be back, Bill.
I've been avoiding. We obviously are talking before we start, and I'm trying to avoid some of the things that need to come out in conversation because I don't know if we can.
Fresh.
Yeah, so I don't know if we can say them again. Um,
Yeah, true. True.
so we did get a little bit of feedback um, on the conversation. Looks like we're going in the right direction here, so we'll just continue
Yeah.
on. We'll adjust as we go. But just got a lot of ideas, a lot of things that I think can really be beneficial, you know, to people. Um, I think I have to really start getting my outside of my normal ideas of like who I'm talking to. Like a lot of times I'm talking to people that have been in this a while, or they've been a believer a long time, and they've been conditioned by traditional thinking or Western thinking, and we need to keep in mind the people that haven't been in believer circles for a long time. Um, that's
True.
important. To keep that in mind as well as we're speaking, because not that we can speak to everybody in the audience, but if we say something that is a traditional or a standard belief or something like that, we may need to slow down a little bit and talk about it, explain what it is versus just expecting everybody to figure out what it is or know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think that's
huh?
a that's a big idea, but that's a big challenge too. It's a not like we wouldn't even say we're dumbing it down
No, no,
because that's not at all what it is. It's just,
no.
I mean, really, there's nothing simple about this idea, but there's really, I mean, it's a difficult process
Yeah,
to unravel. It
right.
takes time to unravel it. So we're trying to go back and pick up all the unraveling that we've had go on
Mm-hmm.
over the years through this process, and it does unravel you. It unsettles you. It just has a lot of different aspects to it. And now I do think this is good for us, for you, for me, because we are not like trying to simplify, but we're trying to make it relatable.
Yeah,
I think's the way. That's
yeah,
what I'm. Yeah, make it relatable to the early, to the people that are in the early stages, and then make it even encouraging to the people that are in the middle of it.
right. So, like somebody that's brand new, and even people um, that are seasoned believers, this stuff that we're talking about can be like catching BBs, or a drink at fire hydrant. So a new believer, you think, well, a new believer would be more disadvantaged at that, and I would say, yeah, kinda maybe, but actually more advantaged, because um, the they don't have to go through all they don't have to weed through all the traditional ideas. So I think that's very helpful, because
Yeah,
I mean, I've met people on both ends of that spectrum that have no traditional ideas ingrained, and then people who have all traditional stuff ingrained. And I'd rather work with the people that aren't ingrained with it
bingo.
than somebody who has, because I think I probably spent the first couple years deconstructing the thought processes of the traditional mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to use names, and I'm okay with using names. And I think the people that I'm currently working with have been, talking about Marty, and I've told him this multiple times, is he comes in at around 40 years old after really being somewhat brought up in the church, but never a regular attender, was not a good, astute institutional guy.
Right.
And I've told him very, very regularly that, you know, it's not his institutional background, his religious background that we're dealing with. It's like we didn't even have to deal with that, and now we're just dealing with his stuff.
Yeah.
Right. We're just dealing with him, which that's what really has to be a part of that early on disciple making is, all right, what's your biggest struggle? And I told him many times, my biggest struggle is still me.
Mm.
And I've been doing this for 20 plus years.
Mm.
But now I say that to make the point is I didn't have to spend a year, 2 years trying to help him be deconstructed, to be, just to have a process of where things are changing in his mind about what he's always known about tradition.
Right.
And it's, man, I tell you, I would, like you said, I've worked with both. I've worked with both sides, and it's a challenge, man, when you got a real good church person that's in there, that's always been doing it, but knows there's something else, and then this disciple making strategy comes along, and it's they know that's what they need, but then they've got all this other baggage that they're still dealing with, and they're too busy involved in this and involved in that, and it's like you've almost got to completely do away with all that stuff that you've always known to be doing, that might not be bad things,
Mm-hmm.
like teaching a Sunday school class,
Right.
or serving on this committee, or it's not that they're bad things, they're just not meant to take the place of the one true thing.
Right. It's busy work. You know.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I rambled for 3 minutes and you said what I needed to say in 2 seconds. That's busy work. Thanks, Bill. You pulled me out of that briar patch, chasing that rabbit.
You're way too hard on yourself, man. But subtly we've turned and this isn't bash the institution day, but
Yeah,
it's just the reality of what it is. It subtly has become consumerism, where what's in it for me, and what am I going to get out of it. Why do I go to where I go to is because the benefits to me and my family. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying don't think like that. I'm just saying that that's really not the point that Jesus came to make. I mean, it's quite the opposite. And some of the things that we talk about personally that we're going through are designed to kill us, which is not a bad thing.
say that one more time.
The things that we're going through are designed to kill us, and that's not a bad
Yeah.
thing, because we need to die, and this is how we die.
Yeah.
We die at the hands of others. That's what Jesus did. He died at the hand of others. So
That's right.
I guess you should hug and kiss the person who comes to kill you. And what I mean, not
We've
only
had quite a
physically,
few of those lately.
huh?
We've had quite a few of those over the last year or two.
Yeah. They're patting you on the back, looking for a soft spot.
Yeah, yeah, and that brings up that's a teachable point right there about one of the main processes of really what we're doing with disciple making is walking alongside of these men that God has brought our way,
Mm-hmm.
and not just trying to relate truth, which that is a huge part, is the information, but we're also trying to relate life in the middle of, seemingly what most church people expect out of their Christian life is praise, prestige, power, and I mean, you can keep going on with the adjectives, but nothing negative.
Yeah.
Whereas on the other side of things, what we've seen to benefit our lives more than anything is not necessarily the positive thing.
Right.
So we're relating this idea that, okay, you come follow us or come follow me, right? In this transaction, just as Jesus was. Not that we're Jesus, but we're mimicking what he did as rabbis to a point,
Right.
to proclaim the disciple making strategy to transfer life. And we say, hey guys, come follow me. Well, what did Jesus say? Hey, come follow me to your point of death.
Yeah.
Watch me die.
Yeah.
And guess what? You're going to be able to die too.
Right.
And are we going to be crucified upside down? Are we going to be beheaded? Are we going to be stoned? No, more than likely not. But there's going to be people that's going to attempt it. And along the way, in that we are going to be beneficial to somebody else in that killing.
Yep. Yeah.
And that sucks to say it, but
well, it clears the decks, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah.
So
yeah.
When the boat's on fire, you're not trying to take the china with you.
That's a good way to say it.
Yeah. You're only taking the bare necessities with you. So trial of fire. Trials and tribulations and things that hurt and things that sting, and I'm talking to myself. I'm encouraging myself at this point.
Yeah, man.
It clears out the chaff and clears out the things that aren't important, and what really is important is what remains. And
that's right.
I don't know who needs to hear it. Maybe I need to hear it more than anybody. Is the one beneficial thing through all this garbage that I've gone through is this process remains, and it doesn't matter what happens to me personally. The process of making disciples and the world impact remains. So
yeah,
that's probably the biggest thing that came out of it. But you also get to know the heart of the Father when you go through stuff. So.
That's right.
But that's that kind of goes back to the, what we talked about last week, a rabbi that says, hey, follow me. That means you're going to be like me. You have the skills you have what it takes to be like me. And when Jesus is getting pummeled and getting the snot beat out of him, the disciples are going, oh man, that's me next. I'm next.
Yeah. This is what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Yippee skippy.
And that's why you saw the back of them, because they're like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Order that.
Yeah.
Well, they argued often. We hear those conversations mainly with the disciple Peter, but they argued with Jesus's outcome of what the Father had basically, one of the two reasons the Father had asked him where he had come to the earth, which is to give his life a ransom. And man, it was a confrontational conversation every time Jesus was saying, my kingdom is not of this world, but yet I've come to set up my kingdom, right? And of course, they're thinking empire. They're thinking who's going to be first, who's going to be second. They're thinking who's the greatest. And the whole time Jesus is like, this has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do.
Right.
The first will be last and the last will be first. The greatest will be the least and the least will be the greatest. I mean, his kingdom's backwards, man.
Yep.
And yet, so I would say, I would be bold enough to say this because I can say it. I mean, well, we got like maybe on average 10 people listening. And
well, how many? Well, we may have a few listening. We're still early into the conversation.
Well, and I would say I would be bold enough to say that I think that the disciple making strategy that we see from Jesus is probably one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult task that Jesus gave, but it is also the most rewarding.
Absolutely.
And I think you want to talk about confrontation. This is a confrontational strategy because it's going to go against everything you've ever been taught in church. It's going to go against a lot of what your pastor has taught you. It's going to go against a lot of what you've heard on Sunday mornings.
And not doctrinally. Not doctrine. That's not what we're talking.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Because I'm thinking like the listener.
Of course.
You're,
oh, yeah.
But you're talking strategically. It's going to go against.
Yeah. Like in force, in movement.
Yeah.
In the force of it. Like it's got that force of the Spirit. That's got that movement of the Spirit of God in it. And man, anytime you see God's Spirit move, it's like, I mean, it's during the birthing pains. It's this, like Jesus says, nobody knows where the Spirit moves. That whole John 3 context with Nicodemus and talking about being born again.
Yeah.
Jesus says, the wind comes and goes. Nobody sees where it comes from. This is the same way a man is born again. And the Spirit comes in, and when the Spirit comes in and moves, there's always something that God's trying to do. And it's usually against what our natural minds think.
Yeah.
And I see that this is a spiritual force that is constantly a difficult conversation and a difficult piece of life. And I'm not trying to scare people, and that's not my point. Again, I'm rambling. It's 7. God, what is it? It's early in the morning. I'm usually still drinking coffee. Bill, you had me up early, but the idea. What I'm trying to say again in a roundabout way is this process itself is, I think, the most difficult command Jesus gave. I mean, you could actually say impossible in your own ability, in your own power. Talk about that a little bit. I like to ask you questions just to get your brain, even in our personal conversations, and not recording them. But explain that a little bit.
Well, so as you're talking, I'm thinking, I'm like you. I'm not trying to scare anybody away, but you need to know the contract. You need to know the contract because there's not a lot of middle ground in this. I mean, there are some middle ground for a time. Like when you first begin, there's a section of this training process where you can kind of be wishy-washy a little bit, but there comes a time when it's a dividing line and it says, okay, this is going to cost you everything. This is going to cost everything you are. This is going to become your identity. Not that I'm trying to establish a cult, but it becomes where you find your who you are in Christ. How you evaluate your success. How you gain your identity as a follower of Jesus himself, because he was a disciple and a disciple maker, which means that's what you got to be. If you're going to follow him, that's what he did. He took everything the Father packed in him and he packed it in other guys. And that's your job. That's God's strategy. I love this perspective. I don't know that I've heard anybody else say it exactly like this. Not that I don't want to say I've had an original thought, because it'd be dangerous. I probably ripped it off of somebody. And unless somebody comes and tells me that I ripped it off.
I probably said it last week, but you can have it. Go ahead.
Or I may have that one guy come and tell me that I did rip it off from him. Remember that? Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But that's an inside joke. Yeah, that was for our enjoyment only. But your original question, which is, make sure I understand it. I remember. I'm not remembering exactly.
Well, just the impossibility of like this, because we're talking again, like this whole part of the conversation, which led me to the question now that I'm looking forward to you answering is, okay, so the difficulty of this process comes with a great force, a great power, which is the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And as we look at this, a lot of times disciple making gets coined as discipleship. And it is to a point, but it's so much more than that.
Right.
Because you don't really need the Spirit of God to do discipleship.
Right.
But to be a disciple maker, you need the Spirit of God.
Right.
And I said,
Yeah,
it's impossible to do this. So now,
right. So saying disciple making is discipleship is like saying a Ferrari is a nice mode of transportation. Yeah, true.
Yeah,
but you're missing
yeah,
it. But it is. I mean, this is probably the most difficult thing, and I was reminded of that yesterday. I was relaying some truth to some people, and man, all I kept hearing was like BBs off of a barrel. It was just plinking off, and in order to make a disciple according to Jesus' standard, you need them to hear on a spiritual level. Well, guess what we can't do? We cannot.
can't provide that.
You won't ever. And if you ever do, I want proof. I want it documented. I want to see that you were able to pound something into somebody's head and get them to hear it, minus the Spirit of God. If you can do it, I'd love to see the formula. I've never seen it. I told people that if I could make people hear and there was a button for it, that button would be war slap out, because I would be pressing it like a video game,
Yeah.
But it is impossible. So what we are proposing is turning regular average Joe, people. I don't want to say just men, because I don't want to exclude women. I'm not excluding anybody. It's just that we deal with men, not women. Somebody said, well, can a man, disciple a woman, or a woman disciple a man? I said, sure. I said, but you're fiddling with a grenade, because this is an intimate.
That's exactly right.
Intimate relationship, a friendship, a deep friendship, one of the deepest friendships you'll ever have with people. Jesus even said that. He says, I don't call you servants, I call you friends. So, that's a big key to this. It's friendship. But you're trying to relay a spiritual idea. You're trying to transform people into Jesus the Christ himself. And that is impossible. I mean, how do we do that with our limited capacity, mentally, limited capacity financially? How do we do that? Well, God makes it impossible so that when it happens, you can't sit there and take credit for it. So.
And what happens when you do try to take credit for it?
Oh yeah, well, you try to take credit for it, and it completely destroys it. Because anybody that tries to take this process and circle people around them, you'll eventually turn into an institutional mindset.
You got that right.
And what that means,
because it's all the empire.
That's right.
Empire building. Yep.
If I try to take credit for it, that means that I can't let Derek do something without giving me credit for it.
That's right.
But if Derek takes my stuff and starts going, this is what I came up with, I'd be like, whatever.
Yeah.
Go for it. If you can make a buck off it, knock yourself out.
Well, let me speak to that point for just a second. Let's go back. Let me speak to that point for a second, because this is a good personal. It's like you said earlier, don't be so hard on yourself. Well, I got to be hard on myself, because if I'm hard on myself in the long run, somebody else might not have to go through as much of the pain and earth-shattering events that happen. But early on in this, with me being an institutionalized guy, a pastor for 20, and I've said it finally, but that's what I am. I've been doing it since 2002, 2001, I guess. And it's 20, it's a lot, 23 years. And I would say I'm building a team. That's what I would say early on in this process of even the disciple making strategy, traveling to the Philippines and being with you and Jason White and Dillingham and so many other people around me. It was guys that I was getting for myself to really to build something that I was doing. It was even on the outside looking in, somebody would think, oh, well, Derek looks like he really likes discipleship. He really likes to train people to do this. And I do at the heart. But my intentions were, oh God, they were so like I needed my stamp.
Yeah.
Everybody needed to have Derek Jones's stamp on it. And I'm like, now He's been kicking my teeth in. I'll clean it up. He's been kicking my teeth in for probably 3 years, maybe 4. And now this is, I had a situation not too long ago, something, of course, similar to what you said, to where somebody took something that I had, and it wasn't my original thought, but it was something that I had crafted pretty good and would have put my stamp on it and guarded that, because was trying to build something for me, and I was guarding that, and they took it from me and told me they were going to take it. And for literally almost the first time in my life, I did not give a crap. I didn't care. And we talked about that, and I was that, and so that little, most people would be like, well, what are you talking about? That's to me, that was monumental, dude.
To a pastor type, I mean, anybody that's a teacher type, that's huge. That's like you're talking about picking your jewels out of your pouch.
Yeah, but my agenda, I think what has changed, and I'm shooting from the hip with I think what has changed is I want to see success in that person.
Yeah.
And if the way that they can get success is to take some of my information and own it for themselves and then realize it really isn't about them either, then hallelujah. Yeah. Because ultimately they're going to fail like I failed. Yeah. And you're looking at it and you're like, well, what's success? Well, success is like the prodigal son and the elder brother with the father, the way the father treated both sons, especially the prodigal. Success is you give people freedom to abuse you, to take advantage of you. And it's not because you just like being taken advantage of. It's because there's a deepness in your heart for them to understand the love of God that you have. And so this process is much like the father in Luke 15 to his 2 sons, which the father gets taken advantage of a lot, but then shows his grace and mercy.
And I think a lot of people, especially people that are watching my life right now and know the intimate details of it, they look at me as, why are you being weak? And it's not weakness. It's meekness.
Power under control.
I could do a lot of things. I could be really hurtful, because sarcasm is something I'm very fluent in. And I...
You got a first degree. You got a black belt in that.
Yeah. I got a PhD, posthole digger degree in that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh man. So
what has led you to be? So why in that? No, you don't have to get into the details of that. But I'll ask this question. Yeah. How has that served you in this process? Because I've seen it. I mean, I know what you're talking about. And how has that served you? Because it hasn't made it easier to be meek.
No.
Right. It's not made it easier. If anything, it's more challenging to be meek than it is to be a peckerhead about it, you know? And there I said it. I broke the ice. We can say whatever we want now. But my question
Yeah,
is to
but it is important.
is yeah, so how I mean explain that process a little bit, because this again is a disciple making, this is a
Yes,
fruit of the spirit.
yes,
It's
very
a
much.
fruit of the spirit, and it needs to be in our life as we're making disciples. So you bring up a good point with your family situation
Yeah.
and the the challenges of just at large with the relationships.
So one thing that this is very similar in the disciple making process is uh, people aren't always going to treat you correctly. You know,
Yeah.
they're not going to react correctly, and you know when someone treats you what others would feel is unjustly, you know, or you feel unjustly from when somebody treats you badly, they're not saying, "Well, I'm gonna unjustly treat you." They think
Yeah.
from their side that it's just, right? And for me, when I see somebody trying to treat me unjustly, it doesn't necessarily make me mad immediately. It breaks my
Mm.
heart. The emotional connection of relationship,
Yeah.
the breaking of that relationship is what's tragic. So when you have somebody like a fellow believer and they're coming at you, trying to destroy you, but you see that they're part of the family, they're part of the process, they're part of the body. Um, it's heartbreaking to see
Yeah.
them. So I think that's why it's changed me to where I'm not, you know, I don't wear my emotions or my feelings or my, protect Bill so far out in front of me anymore. The
Yeah.
protect Bill is kind of 5, 6, 7 steps back. So I think it's probably made me less uh, trigger happy with my reactions.
You don't seem to be as vulnerable to retaliate, or not, maybe not retaliate, but you don't seem to be as vulnerable to continue the conflict,
Yeah, right.
right? Like it's more of and I even say this, not that you were hard to deal with years back, but I mean at all, but there's more of a just take your licks. And there is a time though when when you have to use some of that chutzpah, right? That zeal, that idea of you've got at times to come against some of the things, but again, that's not out of trying to get justice for you. It could also be you coming at some of the stuff going on because you do see down the road of where this could lead,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a intentional idea of, like you're really you're putting in a little bit of effort to the situation, I guess is what I'm trying to say, instead of just standing back and being always vulnerable sometime, or always receiving of the punishment. And sometimes, you got to come in
Yeah,
and take care of it.
yeah, and I think giving people freedom. That's another thing, and
Yeah.
that's probably one of the hardest lessons you ever learn as you get passionate with this, and as it begins to take over your thinking and begins to reshape your strategy as far as your own movement. Um, it's hard not to go look at people and go, well, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you jumping in? Why aren't you doing this? Look how clear it is in the scriptures. Why aren't you? Come on, let's go. It gives you a little bit of peace to go. Hey, they don't hear it. They don't see it. They don't understand it. And it doesn't mean they're stupid. Doesn't mean that they're not spiritual. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It just means they for whatever reason, and I don't know what that is, and I couldn't tell you, but you have to let people be where they are, and
That's right.
that's hard. That really is hard,
Mhm.
especially when you see
Yeah.
their potential, and what they could be, and then to see them back away or discount it or argue with it, and I'm, if somebody wants to argue about this, fine. If you got to pick it apart to find something the reason not to do it, go for it. I'm not going to fight you,
Yeah.
because if I got to fight you to get into it, I got to fight you to stay into it, and I just don't have that kind of time nor energy.
Well, and I would even say this, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And a lot of people do bring their brains into this
Oh,
process,
sure.
like deep thinkers, that personality type, which I'm a deep thinker, but I'm more impulsive, to where somebody gives me something that looks good, that's going to require me to be energetic, that's going to require me to take something and run and be the first one. That's me. But there's people, so really, you can't bring your brain into this. Like you have to, because there is
There's not
a
much options.
process. Well,
There's not any other
do what?
option.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what I'm saying is there's a lot of action in this process.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things to be doing, not just to be contemplating and to
Yeah.
be thinking. Well, that looks good. I might, and it is though. You can bring your, you. I'm not saying check your brain at the door, just come in and go with the flow, because you're going to wrestle with
Yeah.
all the information. But it does seem to a point like the people that overthink this process are the ones that struggle to do what is required in this process. Whereas other people that tend to be just impulsive, like me, I'm not going to say I accidentally came into this, but I don't know. I was pretty much destitute and done with religion
Mm-hmm.
and with institutionalism. And then it showed up. And when it showed up, it was like, this is something I can do. This is something I see that needs to be done. And I took it and ran. Whereas some people, instead of taking it and running and figuring out all your failures along the way while you're running, which is me,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, instead of running because they don't want to be that guy that's always screwing up, they take it and they just mull over it and they think about it and they process it and they don't do a lot with it. And I guess it's two different ways to enter into this process.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, it sure does seem like the impulsive screw ups are the ones that usually tend to lead the packs. It doesn't mean they always have it right. And like I just said a couple minutes back, my intentions were freaking wrong
Right.
for many years in this,
Mm-hmm.
because it was still about me. But because I moved in that rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say, moved in that rhythm of this process, which is, it is about movement. It is about doing
Mm-hmm.
more than it is about, I mean, you got to get it here. But for me, the way I get it here is do something with it.
Right. Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, the way you're here, the way you hear is get it in your head first. And you bring up a kind of a thought in my own head of, what brings people into this process.
Yeah.
Frustration sometimes brings people into this process. People's desire to become more. They see somebody moving and they go, "Ooh, I want to be that guy," because they either are getting praise or for the moment getting praise or whatever, and they think,
Yeah.
or they hear them teach, or they hear truth being relayed, and they go, "Ooh, I want to relay truth like that." Or I want to have that knowledge, and it a lot of times it's more self-centered, and that's okay. You can start that way, because don't think the disciples didn't start that way, and don't think that they weren't in the process deep before, and still thinking that way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. There's all kinds of evidence that
yeah,
they were still thinking this was all about me
yeah,
years after.
yeah. You know, what am I going to get out of this? You know, what's going to benefit me in this? And that's okay. I mean, you can think that way. I don't recoil back from somebody and go, oh, you're just being selfish. You know, you're just in this for what's for you. No, I count on that. I count on the fact that you're here because you're wanting something for yourself, and that's okay. I'm good with that because I know.
You know what? Because you said it to me about 100,000 times. What do you know? Tell us, Bill.
I know it's gonna change because my
Yeah,
intention is much greater than your understanding.
that's right.
So
And you know what it's gonna you know what is going to have to happen to that person ultimately to get beyond the challenges of yeah, to get beyond the challenges of where they're at.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, of course they're signing up for something that they don't fully understand
No.
what the results of that is going to end up doing. The process is going to destroy you.
No. They we do not, when we begin in this process, we don't understand how much it's going to cost us. No more than the disciples knew it was going to cost them everything. They had no idea. On that seaside or at that tax collection table or under that tree or wherever Jesus found them. And he said, "Follow me." They were like, "Ooh, I'm going to be a rabbi," you know, and I'm going to have respect, and I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have that, and I'm going to have an income, and I'm going to be part of the community, a pillar of the community, and I'm going to do this, that, and oh, we're going to have the kingdom. Ooh, I'm going to be in charge of something, you know. I'm going to rule and
Yeah.
reign. I'm going to do all this other stuff, and Jesus is like, yeah, 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 you are, but you don't get that it's going to cost you your very life. And so we approach that the same way with people, and it's okay. And if somebody gets in the middle of it and goes, "Hey, this is way too deep for me," or this is you're asking, you know, they say I'm asking, but God, you're asking more than I want to give, and God's fully fine with you, cutting bait and running.
Yeah.
Um, you're not going to be happy. There's a point in this process too, and I will give a disclaimer. There's a point in this process where you're so far in that you can't go back without being miserable. Um,
You
and
know people like that.
oh my goodness, a bunch.
Yeah. Same here.
And
Same here.
and usually when they feel the worst is when I happen to run across them.
Oh, yeah.
And all I am
Yeah.
is a reminder. So,
Yeah.
um,
Because there is a stamp of, like we were talking about, like my stamp. I was wanting to stamp everything,
yeah,
owned by Derek Jones.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is Derek Jones, those old labelers from way back in the day. And you could, whatever like you putting those labels like this is my possession.
uh,
And there is a point to that though, where we have invested so much time into people that
yeah,
that I shouldn't even say they are ours, but there is a responsibility and there is, like you said, and such an influence that when we show up, we carry a weight in that relationship
right,
with it could be uncomfortable. It could be they get around us for a second or two and it's like boom, they were out and they're back in because there's such a vortex
mm-hmm,
with the movement of
yep,
us when we get around them. And then it's like, oh, I like that. I remembered what that was like meeting with Bill or meeting with Derek. I want that again. And then it's like, no, you really don't. But I'm saying the influence that we have in those relationships is paramount
yep,
in that person, so that when we do show up, like you said, we could cause some great tension, and it's not our intentions,
Right.
but the tension is a part of the process.
Right. Because
We could say the tension's baked into the cake.
yeah, and because there's like I said, there's very little middle ground in here. I mean,
Yeah, that's another good way to say. That's a good point. Bringing that back,
yeah,
yeah, to what you said
it's
earlier.
so
That's right.
hard. It's so and I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'll let you believe whatever you want to believe. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, I'll let you. I'll let you believe that you're going to find salvation in worshiping a rat. You know, uh, that was a Florida and California reference. If you want to go worship the
Uh,
big rat, okay, knock yourself out. I'm not coming to your house. I'm not gonna. That's the best thing about this process is because if we know, going back to your question, the impossibility of this, you know if you're gonna let people, if you really want the Spirit of God to make disciples through you, you have to let the Spirit of God speak to them, and you have to let the Spirit of God transform them. It's not you transforming them. It's the power of the Spirit, power of the truth. You're
yeah,
just a relayer. You're just a repeater of it. Uh, you're
you're
not.
the conduit. You're the piece of the pipe carrying the water to the
That's
thirsty.
it. That's it. And
Yeah,
and my job is to hear truth correctly. And somebody said, "Well, what's correct?" And get into all this doctrinal stuff. Just please leave me alone, okay? Uh, you know.
there's a lot of better things to do than wrestle with who's right and who's wrong.
Oh my God. There's some things that are obvious. Can we just do those?
Yeah.
Let's just do those. Uh, Anyway, I might get in trouble for that, but but the point is I've got to take these truths, and usually the truths that I'm talking about are the truths that are obvious in the text. The text is
Mhm.
clear. The text says it, and there's no debate about it. I mean, it's what it says, and once you see that, you have to follow it, or you have to say no. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Now, I could wrestle you. I could hit you over the head with ball bats, and that's not really the way that Jesus trained his men. I mean, was he hard on them? Sure. Was he harsh? Absolutely. But was he trying to crush them? Was he trying to beat them into submission? No. They could have left at any moment. And we have to be the same way. Hey, I'm not telling you anything of myself. I'm telling you everything of the Father. So if you want to fight about this, you fight with the Father about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going this direction. If you want to come, great. If you're not want to, okay. I'm not happy about it. I'll let you go.
And this is another aspect of I think what we're talking about today, if we would summarize it, is just the relational challenges in disciple making.
Yes.
It's and just in life, even if you're not doing what we're talking about
Yeah.
and obviously doing and have been doing for years, there's still tension in all relationships.
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
having said that, this is like what I think where we're at, kind of piggybacking off of last week with this idea of, okay, well, what's a disciple? And we had truth that we shared
Mm-hmm.
last week. We had experience
Yep.
that we shared because we both have been in the process, have been discipled, and are currently discipling.
Yeah.
With all that said, what I think we're doing today is very practical. It's very relational, and it's freeing to the person that's listening. It seems like a lot of what they do, there's tension in their relationships. And for me personally, I had to finally get to a place not too long ago, not that I wanted tension, But I had to get to a place not too long ago that I had to realize that in the disciple making process, sometimes you're going to create tension whether you want to or not. And the tension sometimes has to come, and the tension sometimes, these weren't muted, but anyway, the attention, it has to, and I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, the idea of
relationships and tension in relationships.
Relationship and tension is this process will always cause tension. Mm-hmm. And I have seen that personally in people that I have poured many years into, and then looked around, and without intention, I was not intentionally putting tension in the relationship, but I caused tension by some things I said. Mm-hmm. But I still wouldn't go back and take away what I said.
Right.
Like I wouldn't say, well, I shouldn't have said that because I needed to say that. But when I said that, obviously this started happening.
Right.
And the reason this started happening is because, not that I'm going one way and they're going another way, it needed to be said. Yeah. Like it needed to be said. And what needed to be said is, you're ready. Quit thinking you're not ready. You've been packed full. Go get a guy. He's coming. Right? Like, yeah. It's like,
he's waiting.
Quit sucking on hind tit and let's go. You're ready. Yeah. The whole idea of desiring, whole idea of Paul saying you were still drinking milk. Yeah. It's time for you to go eat meat. It's time for you to go be who God's called you to be, who God's prepared you to be. And there was a point in time when I had spent time with this individual, and not just individual now, but individuals. And I spent time with them, and I had to be hard to a point to where this relationship is not the same.
Yeah.
It's different. And I had to kind of walk away. And it might be the best thing I ever did, but it was the hardest thing I've done in a relationship.
Which is...
Explain that a little bit.
Well, it goes back to another impossibility of this process. It seems like that seems you've made a theme here. The
impossibility.
The impossibilities of the process, really. Is that this process will assault you on every level, and it will test and push and try every aspect of your personality humanly, and your spiritual personality. And it's going to test every avenue, every crook and cranny of it. And that's going to get uncomfortable. That's going to get to the point where, there'll always be a decision to be made. Am I going to hang on to the garbage of my life? Am I going to release that and become what God sees me to be? Some people, and we always know that guy that he wants to be the manly man, and he never wants to be seen as weak. One guy just came to my brain. And I won't say some of the things he said because I know it would be obvious who I'm talking about. But it's so bad to say it. But
just to see if they're listening, or
I'm just listening to it, and I'm thinking, what you're talking about, being a manly man, it's stupid. It's dumb. But in this process, you're going to have to be handled roughly at times.
Yeah.
And if you can't handle that, it's going to be hard. And in fact, we know.
From a friend.
Huh?
From a friend. Yes. From a friend. From somebody that has been with you and poured into you. And then you've got to be that. You at times have to be that tension in the relationship.
Yes.
And it sucks.
Yes.
But that's kind of moving on into more of the mature, and I'm not saying I would like to think I'm more mature in this than a lot, but in that in that realm of disciple making, that is the more mature level. Because don't you think Paul is creating confrontation and tension when he writes that? He's like, get off of the daggone milk, get off of the baby bottle, and move on to something that's more beneficial, not to you, but to the world around you.
Yeah.
And that's another part of the tension in this. And again, going back to the theme, the impossibility of the relationship is that, number one, what you said is, we don't have the power to open the eyes of the people. Jesus said, I'm going to leave you a helper. He's going to come along beside of you. He's going to remind you of everything I said, and he's going to bring light to the world. He's going to bring conviction to the heart of the person. Go and read John John 16, the first 8-10 verses, and it'll show you what the Spirit of God came to do. And that's not our role, but we at times have to be the mouthpiece of the Spirit of God.
Yes.
And say what the Spirit has put in our heart from experience, and also from our own failure, from our own lack thereof of whatever of that. So again, yeah, man, we are the tension sometimes.
Well, I've had this happen to me. In fact, a couple weeks ago, I said something that was completely fleshly. I mean, it was flesh, 100% flesh. It was Bill and all the rotten garbage that you could ever dig up. Right? It was just a bad. Huh?
I'm surprised at that, Bill.
Yeah,
I didn't think you had rotten flesh.
Stick around. So as soon as I said it, this brother said something that was so profound it was scriptural based, so it wasn't his opinion. He said something out of scripture, and I went, my flesh says you suck, but my spirit says thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I could differentiate between how my flesh reacts versus how my spirit reacts.
True.
And so, that's what this process has to develop in you, is the ability to listen to what your brother is saying on a spiritual level versus a physical or a human level. So that's a big one. And we've known, and there's one guy that that is connected to both of us, that I basically kicked out of the process because I offended him. And you were like, hey, you really offended that guy. And I'm like, hey, that's what it takes. That's what it takes to knock you out. Yeah. Because it's going to get a lot harder from here. And if you can't handle the little things, the Bible even talks about that. Hey, if you can't handle the footmen, the ground troops, what are you going to do when the horses come?
That's right. Yeah. Well, and it goes back to something I think we talked about this last week. I think we alluded to the idea of where, and I don't want to, I'm trying to find a way to correctly say it, but it goes back to that this process is going to do everything that we would want done to the next person, and even to ourselves. Like that's what makes it hard, is we sometimes just have to stand back and do nothing for God to do something. Mm-hmm. And yet what we do a lot of times is I come in and do a lot to try to get something to happen, and all my doing, all my words, all my motivational whatever, that's gonna be the wrong motivation, the wrong intention for moving. So we come back to, my intention has to always be greater than the intention of the person that I'm discipling.
Yes.
And the intention that I have to continue to hold to is, number one, this is an impossible task that only I've got to trust the Spirit of God to work in Marty, to work in Sonny Matt, to work in all of these guys that, I can list over the years. I have to trust the Spirit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm name dropping, but those two names that I name dropped they're definitely okay with it. And so you bring somebody like Marty into the equation. And as we said earlier on in the podcast, I'm not deconstructing his religious. I'm not wasting my time trying to tell him that, number one, you don't have to go to church to be saved. I mean, and that's a pretty big. You don't have to go to church to be blessed by God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big thing to wrestle with people in this process that have been institutionalized forever. So I'm bringing those two guys up. I'm bringing those two guys up to make a point about what you said earlier with the individual, that sometimes we have to be the ones that say certain things to unsettle the process, to cause ripples. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is when that water just stays calm, it's good because there's nothing to battle. There's no wind. You don't have to pick up an oar and battle at the oar, right? But when the storm comes in, it's almost like the two occasions that Jesus says is you're trusting in the middle of the storm the same way you're trusting when it's calm.
Yeah.
Like it's like sometimes the storm is necessary. I wouldn't say sometimes, always the storm is necessary. And in this process, if we understand that our intentions are always going to be greater than the intentions of the guys that come along, then we're going to be able to let them have all the freedom they want. To say no, to take our stuff and use it and say it's mine, to succeed and we not like for them to win and it looks like we fail or it looks like we lose. It still doesn't matter because our intentions with the process are we want to get you from point A to point B, and what's point B? And point B is this thing is not about you. It's about others.
Yeah. And the whole point of this, the point of the disciple making process is to produce reproducers. That's it. I mean, if you want to nutshell it, that is it.
Doing good.
Somebody's coming in the room.
Yeah. You good? We're good.
It's all right. We need the interruptions. It's like a
that's right.
It's like a speed bump. So when you're looking at the sheer, the time involved to get through the garbage of humanity, the thought, whether you have institutional thoughts or whether you have non-institutional thoughts, you still got to get through all this
podcast. You're fine.
Yeah, I still have to get through all this, all the garbage. You want to bring them on? You want to bring them on?
You want to come on, Gary? You want to come on? Here, we'll show you. We'll get you face. We're recording. You're in the process of.
Where are we going to go hunting?
Go down so you can see your face. There you go.
Hey, Gary.
He's driving today for Christian Tours.
Well, actually, I'm not driving. I'm a teacher.
Oh, tour directing.
Yes.
Tour directing.
But I told him that I went and got 10 bags of corn yesterday, and we're going to put it out in a couple of days. We've already put out 10 or 15 bags.
Yeah. Wow.
So we got to have
for hunting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So what are you doing?
We're talking about the disciple making process.
Well, we're all disciples, aren't we? If we're in the tree stand. I do a lot of praying when I'm in the tree stand, not necessarily for a deer to walk by.
Yeah.
Listen, you guys carry on.
Okay.
You guys carry on and pray for all the people that are out here on the roads that are acting crazy. Okay.
Well,
You
well,
getting ready to be on your long trip?
Actually, I'm going to the trade show for
Okay.
the next 5 days, which won't be too bad, you know.
well, I appreciate you
So,
praying for me because I'm one of those crazy people on the road.
well, now I don't know if Derek told you, but my nephew's son is a Lutheran minister across from his church. Did
Ah,
you know that? Have y'all met him?
No, no,
Well,
we'll have
listen.
to pray for him.
Well, listen, let me tell you what you got to do. He's a young one. You guys got some age on you. So you do the daddy thing and go over and say, hey, we need to get acquainted. Is that not right?
Yeah.
works for
I
me.
mean, because he's like 26, 7, because, I mean, Lutheran, Methodist, Baptist, whatever. I mean, we're sort of all in this together, right?
Denominationalism.
I mean, that don't really change anything. I mean, we're all in this together. We're trying to bring people to the Lord, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Now, where are you? Are you a pastor?
I'm a pastor type. I'm not a pastor, but I'm a pastor type.
Well, if we're all disciples, we're all trying to do the right thing and trying to lead people to the Lord and trying to be a shining light, right?
Hmm.
Are you letting your light shine?
A little bit.
Oh, I think I need to go right on, Derek. Y'all carry on. Anyway, well, hey, I don't mind telling you sometimes the light sort of flickers and goes out a little bit, and I say something that I'm not supposed to say, and they write something negative on that survey, and Heather calls me.
Oh.
And you know,
Heather's not going to be listening to this.
Oh,
You're okay.
so
She's not going to be
when they
listening.
write something negative on that survey, Heather will call me and say, Gary, what happened? And I'm like, well, you know what? When people push my buttons so many times, it tends to come out. You know? Is that not right, Derek? Come on.
That was a good interruption.
And you know what I tell her? I say,
He's still talking.
she puts a nice one. When she sends me a nice one, I say, put that one on the top of the list because somebody's going to throw me under the bus before long.
That's right. Hey, Gary, have a good day. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Um,
That's kind of what we're looking at doing with bringing these people in
yeah.
time is
Yeah.
and that was a good interruption. I think it's a
Well,
a
he
good
kind of proves our
point.
point.
That's right.
He proves because he heard disciple making, and his mind immediately went to
See you, Gary.
discipleship, and
Yeah,
and that's
right.
is it involved in what we're doing? Oh, we're all disciples, aren't we? Yeah, technically, yeah.
Well, and you could hear the institutionalism
Sure.
come out immediately, which is, well, he knew me as a pastor and assumed that you were a pastor or with me
Yeah.
somewhere, right?
Right.
But and I think it is that like you said, that was an unexpected interruption,
Yes.
but at a good time in our conversation
Yeah. But
to
good.
prove,
Welcome to life, though. Welcome to life.
yeah.
A lot of.
Welcome to the difficulty of this process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're going to have interruptions. You're going to have detours. You're going to think, wow, this is really a hindrance. And it turns out to be a benefit because it's going to teach you something that you need, something that you didn't have before. But
That goes back.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it
You
goes
go ahead.
back to what?
I was going to bring Sonny Mack.
Yeah.
Bring him up in that where him and what he's doing now with I won't say what he's doing, but I mean he's involved in more of an institutional role than he had ever wanted to be in the last year or so, and that's something that he keeps telling me is that this point in where he's at in the institution is not necessarily for him, but it's so he can learn the personalities of the people that are more challenging to him. He's going to be a lot like me early on in this process where God's probably not going to give him a fireball. because if God gives him a fireball, those two are going to destroy the world and each other. And he's going to probably give him someone that's very middle ground. They're going to think it. They're not going to be impulsive. They're going to be the brake to his pedal. They're going to be the, the glue to his oil. It's just going to be this. They're just going to be, and the reason is because, it's still, we will benefit from every relationship that we have with an individual.
That's right.
We'll benefit.
Absolutely.
Even if they're highly institutionalized.
Right. And it'll be a training process in both directions. Training process for the person you're teaching, and a training process for you as you're teaching. Because
never a one-way street.
Never. And you never, and you're not going to get in this process with anybody that it doesn't change you in some way. It's gonna leave its mark, on you. And I guess it's really beneficial today that we're talking about all this stuff, because I don't want anybody to come into this or thinking that, oh, this is easy, or oh, this is this is just going to take 5 or 6 weeks, 2 months, a year. No, it just doesn't work that way. It takes time. Because you literally are trying to transform somebody into the very image of Jesus the Christ himself, in word, action, deed, everything. Now, I'm not saying that you're trying to form a rabbi, somebody who's going to live out under a tree somewhere, because Jesus didn't have much. He just didn't have much resources. But may you produce somebody like that? Maybe. But what we need is people that are just common, living their everyday life, that are transformed spiritually into Christ himself. And we need at some point to talk about Christ, the word, the office of Christ versus Jesus, the name. Because a lot of people look at Christ as Jesus, and that's true. He did fulfill that office, but there's a bigger idea around it. Maybe we'll do that next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I wonder if.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with that same train of thought, I wonder if, going back to the relational aspect of disciple making, the relational aspect where not a single relationship that you encounter in this process it's not wasted. Nothing's wasted at all. And one thing for sure, practically speaking, early on for me, I was just like throwing out information, and it's like I was fishing. And Jesus says, come be fishers of men. And that's a high intentional idea of disciple making. And all that you can fish with is the truth. And you throw it out, right? Like you throw it out and you see who shows up that has some kind of desire to hear more.
Yeah.
You're just looking for the maybe more attentive listener, but now what we tend to do is we pick and choose who we want, and we have to be careful with that, because a lot of times who we want is not who God wants.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because God is yet to bring that person to us. And I've personally experienced that as well, to where there were a lot of guys early on I just sat down with just because it was the right thing to do, and they really weren't engaged in this process. They were just wanting an accountability partner. They were just wanting somebody to keep them on their toes. And I'm like, it's not what this is about. And then, of course, it would quickly dwindle. But even those relationships taught me stuff. Yeah. They were beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, there's a lot of guys, and I say sifting I mean, you really are going to sift through a lot of people early on in this process.
Yep.
There's going to be, like Jesus did, there's going to be a lot that come and multitudes maybe that follow. Of course, we're not going to have that, but there's going to be a lot of people, and then they're going to be weeded out just by what you're doing and the life you're living. And then eventually you'll be left with one, two here, and that's who you pour into.
Right.
But we're always pouring into everybody. We're serving up bread for everybody, like the Mark 4 text, and we're just throwing the bread out. Mm-hmm. We're distributing it, and we're going to see who shows up. Right. And there's going to be people that show up that aren't really going to be reproduced in the long run. Mm-hmm. But that's still a beneficial relationship.
Right, because like you're saying about throwing truth around, which is like that's the sower. Parable of the sower. He's throwing truth, it's seed, and wherever it finds, whatever it finds, it finds. And like I tell people tell individuals when I first start meeting, I probably for the last 5 to 10 years had started saying this: the reason we're meeting is because somebody else is praying. God, send me somebody to help me, and you're the answer. And so what we have to do is we have to get you prepared and ready. We need to fully equip and arm you so that when you meet this person, you're ready for them. And and you begin the idea of this is outside of you, and this is something that is going to go expansively away from you, and so you have to build the next guy into a complete formation of Christ himself, so that when he reproduces it, you have another formation of Christ himself with no reduction. So, and you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that in 2 months. You're not going to do that in a year. You're not going to. It's going to take time, and there's a lot of things you got to get in, and truth is one of them. But there's a lot of practical things that has to happen. So it's very, 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 it's the most difficult thing you ever put your hand to, but it's the most rewarding, most gratifying thing you ever do as well. I cannot imagine my life any other way.
Yeah.
Like if you were to offer me, think of, and I don't want to pick on anything because I may miss something, pick anything in religious or Christian circles and say, ooh, this would be the pinnacle of, success. There's nothing you have that you could offer me that I would trade this for. I've seen enough, or know enough of what that stuff is, that you could hand me a ministry. Hey, we want you to be the leader of this huge ministry. No.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I don't want to part.
Even what used to entice us doesn't hold the weight anymore, because, and I'll say this, I feel like I really need to say this, because of the faithfulness and longevity of the task. I think that's the only reason I'm here today. Is because of faithfulness and longevity, not because I've been a perfect disciple maker.
Right.
Not because I've always done it right, because as well as a lot of other people that I haven't. But the only reason you and I are here today having this podcast is because we stuck with it.
Yes.
And the only reason today that I can say that I am in no way, shape, or form enticed to move my carcass to a bigger institution is because I've seen how this process works. I've stuck with it long enough to realize if you want to make an impact, the last thing you need is a bunch of people following you.
Yeah. You think more is better? More is not better. More is a headache.
But that's an enticement for people. For many people, that is an enticement. I want more. And
my
like
daughter,
you said, it's not.
Yeah, my daughter told me about a situation where an institutional guy he wanted more and more people coming, and he offered some ridiculous amount of money to the person who could have the most people at an event. Just
What?
Yeah, just stupid, just dumb. And I'm just like, well, and she was just amazed by that. And I said, well, he's just telling you how he marks success.
Showed his hand, just like flipping the cards and saying, "Here's what I got."
Yeah, here I got it. This is what I'm playing with. Yeah. So if you have butts in the seat, you're a success. Well, if you got butts in the seat, guess what you got? Butts in the seat.
Yep.
You don't have anything. Not until it's tried. Just like this information that we're giving. You may say, hey, that's what I want to do. This is what I want to be. This is where I want to go. I want to live the life that Jesus lived. And that's great. But just understand that eventually this information is going to get tried. It's going to get pushed on. It's going to go through some hard places. It's going to go through some hot places. It's going to go through some prickly places. It's going to go through all kinds of briars. You're not. It's going to be pushed. And
you're seeing the souls in Matthew 13 or Mark 4, the four you just described, the four souls.
Yeah. It's going to be rough. But once it makes it through that, then you got something. But
got production.
Yeah, but it's got to get tried. It's got to go through something. You got to make a decision. In this process, and this is another impossible task, man. Is you'll be walking with somebody, and it's just like a fork in the road. I mean, a literal deviation. You go this direction, or you go this direction, and you have to make a decision. Which way am I going to go? And boy, the deeper you are, the higher up in the hierarchy of any institution, the harder that question is, because you're talking about laying down something that you've invested a lot of time and effort in.
Laying down your own identity too.
Oof.
I've wrestled with that I've been wrestling with that grenade for 18 years, man.
Yeah.
And I've, it's like, oof, where along the line I'll say it this way. When's God going to give me another chance? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I still say he's given me multiple chances to get out, and I've chose not to. And it's like, okay, God, give me another chance. I'm gonna get out this time. I'm gonna lay down my reputation. And it's dang, dude, it's such a reduction, though. We talked about that institutionalism, the Sunday morning gathering. Anything in it, it's not that it's bad. Don't hear me. Dadgummit, I'm a pastor. But it is a reduction to this process.
It can be.
It is an absolute reduction. And that I doubt there's many people that's listened this far. So that's probably a good place to say it. But maybe the person that's listening needed to hear that right there.
Yeah.
That the process can be done in the institution. It can.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And I've been in the institution for 20 plus years.
I probably got the closest, I think, to getting it institutionally set.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, boy, you wasted your time on that one. No, I didn't waste my time, because God had to show me that in a punctuated way that, hey, you think you're going to make this work in an organization? It don't work that way. It won't work that way. It refuses to work that way. It's like trying to, you're trying to mix water and oil. It might stay together for a while as long as you keep stirring it up, but you let it settle, and they're going to separate. There's no doubt about it. Man, believe it.
Well, and even, I mean, I don't know. I would say it was probably about time to wrap it up. But going back to what I think we've coined the theme of the impossibility and the mission impossible. Um,
Oh, you had to come up with something. Something.
well, and you look and it's okay, just like our special guest that comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, well, disciple making is letting your light shine and telling people about Jesus.
Yeah.
No,
No.
but again, we have made this thing so doable, so comfortable, so easy. And there ain't a single word that comes out of Jesus's mouth when he's talking about his mission, his kingdom, and what he expects out of his
Yep.
people. Zero. Zero simple.
Right. It's clear.
Zero ease.
It's very clear, but not simple in any way.
That's right. And and the point of tension, another word that's introduced into what we've talked about today, that is enough tension. That is enough tension. Just that idea, what I just said, what we've been talking about. That's enough tension in all our relationships that we really don't have to find tension. That's enough tension right there.
Yeah.
That what you're about to embark on is going to be impossible. But if you realize it's not for you or about you, God's going to step in and do the impossible through you.
And because we understand our deficiencies, we understand the way we're incapable of doing this in ourselves. That really allows the Spirit of God to come in and Jesus to work through us in a way that, and we can release that. We go, you know what? I know this is impossible. God, you're going to have to do something. And man, talk about miracles upon miracles that you'll see in people's lives, people transformed. And understand this about the truth. You know, like you were saying, nothing's wasted. There's been guys that I've put information in that dropped away, and you know, people say, "Oh, that was a failure," and I'm like, "Well, I don't know. They're not dead yet. I mean, we don't.
That's right.
We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen." And right now, I'm seeing one guy transformed, you know, in information that I gave him a long time ago, but it's just now hitting. It's just now beginning to grow and produce that, which is, so you know. How long do you got to wait for somebody to... I don't know. How long you got to wait? Until it's time. Until the Spirit of God hits them with it. And, you know, you may put that... It's just like those seeds that or grains of wheat they found in a pyramid somewhere, you know, in Egypt. And, you know, they've been sitting around in a bowl or whatever for 2,000 years. And they took it and they planted it, and guess what? It daggum grew. That means the seed will lay dormant as long as it needs to, until it finds the right conditions, and then it will grow. So throw the seed and,
That's right.
you know, learn through the process. Am I saying don't try to say it better? You know, say it better. You know, do, you know, improve, but don't think that you're going to come in some magical, oh, if I could just explain it well enough. Oh, well, you know, Bill, you know, you're a great guy, but you know, you're not really hitting it home like I could hit it home. Well, go for it there, Skippy. Do what you got to do. You know, lead the way.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody tells me my process stinks and that it could be better, okay. I'm not taking offense to that, but you're going to have to back it up. And if you're telling me how wrong I'm doing it, fantastic. I'll hook up with you, and you can show me how to do it. I'm not above it. I'm not above being instructed. So, but at the same time, don't criticize what I'm doing and trying to get me to stop so you feel better about yourself.
That's right.
So we got a lot of impossibilities, that's for sure. Any last words?
No, I mean, you know, we've said enough. I've rambled enough today. I felt like my brain was so disconnected, but I think we felt like that before we started, but who knows what will turn out. One thing I appreciate about this is nothing's changed between our conversations.
Mm-mm.
Right? Like, I still feel like we're having the same conversations we've had on the phone for years.
Yeah.
I think we're still having the same, and now we're just getting to record it for the benefit of somebody else.
Like, yeah, we would never have this. We would never have this type of. This conversation would probably be about 10 minutes because we just remind each other about certain things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we like, how people, there's, oh yeah, okay, and move on.
Yeah.
But now we're having to explain it. We're having to expound upon it. But as we continue this conversation, we're going to, maybe we'll get more into the Great Commission next time. But I'm not trying to shove this in any direction. But necessarily, I mean, I am shoving in a direction, but I'm not trying to make it take a certain path.
Yeah, yeah.
All
That's
right.
good. That's a good thing.
All right, man. I'll see you next
Yeah.
time.
Good talking, brother.
See ya.
See you, man.